Welcome everyone, this is Kerjims channel. Now we are back to our new episodes of two semi-rounded champions and comparisons featured by Wild League of Legends versus the Mobile Legend Bang Bang. But before that, please like and subscribe to my channel and don't forget to click the bell icon so you will be notified to our new next episode review. Let's do this!
Born from the aspect of justice, Kayle has taken up her mother's sword and vowed to purge the land of evil in an unrelenting crusade. She increases in power over the course of a game, sending wave after wave of fiery celestial fury to serve the unjust their final judgment. The righteous shall prevail. Kayle's passive is Divine Ascent. Over the course of the game, Kayle rises closer to her celestial form, increasing the speed, range, and power of her basic attack by Righteous Fury, and her basic attacks increase her attack speed. At max stacks, Kayle becomes exalted and gains movement speed toward enemies. At level 6, Kayle flies on 2 sets of wings, and when exalted, her attacks launch flaming waves that deal bonus damage. At level 11, Kayle's helmet comes off and another pair of wings appear, signaling that she now attacks from range. At level 16, Kayle transforms into a true champion of justice, wielding 2 swords, becoming permanently exalted, and dealing true damage with her waves of fire. Starfire Spellblade has a passive and active effect. Passively, her basic attacks deal bonus magic damage. When activated, Kayle's next basic attack becomes ranged and deals a portion of the target's missing health as bonus damage. After ascending to level 6, this attack damages enemies next to the target as well. Kayle's Radiant Blast pierces the first enemy hit with light, dealing damage, shredding resistances, and slowing any foe caught in the blast. Celestial Blessing heals Kayle and a target allied champion, infusing them both with a burst of speed. It's a short duration buff, so it's better at quickly maneuvering and dodging enemy attacks rather than long-term chases. Kayle decides who lives and dies. Her Divine Judgment makes a target ally completely invulnerable for a couple seconds, then purifies the area around them with a cascade of shining blades. Kayle can move while casting, but can't attack or cast other spells until the swords fall. This means it's often better to ult an ally who can dive the enemy team instead of using it on yourself. You'll save them from certain death and massively damage foes at the same time. In order for Kayle to truly mete out justice, she must ascend to her final form as quickly as possible. However, her weak early game can be hell, so you'll need to play safe to avoid becoming superfood. Rely on Radiant Blast and Starfire Spellblade to farm from range. If you stray too close, or try to wing it in a fight, you'll be butchered where you stand. Calling on allies for aid can spare you the worst of your rough early game. Use Divine Judgment for a clutch intervention, then turn the fight in your favor and get the kill. The Righteous really shines once she reaches level 11 and starts to outscale enemies. Tower dives are no trouble thanks to Divine Judgment, and your rapid fire attacks will melt enemies easily. Exaltations all around. Once Kayle's apotheosis is complete, take your crusade across the map for the final victory. Lead your own team into the fray, protecting critical allies while condemning your enemies to a swift execution. If you want a glorious paladin who eventually becomes a godlike agent of punishment, over the laning phase of Kayle as well as the mid late game, and including the team fighting as well as the tips. However, before we continue with the guide for Kayle, I do have a little quick announcement about my stream. If you are new to this YouTube channel and you don't know about my stream yet, I would highly suggest that you check out my stream. I'm streaming about 5 to 6 times a week right now. I'm actually a challenger player for about 4 seasons in a row. So if you're looking for a streamer to watch to actually get better at the game, or you have questions in general, don't forget to check out my stream, guys. There will be a link inside the description below. But with that being said, guys, let's actually move on to the Kayle guide. Starting off with the runes first, I always recommend going inside the precision tree. Now inside the precision tree, there's actually two choices that you have, which both work very well. We have complete footwork and we have press the attack. Now press the attack is actually really good if you want to have more damage throughout the game. However, it's not the best rune for Kayle, as complete footwork is actually the best rune. This rune is basically perfect in almost every game that you play, because it doesn't only provide you the sustain for the laning phase to make the laning phase a lot easier, but the fleet footwork also allows you to get movement speed so you can actually reposition yourself a lot more easy. Now, especially on Kayle, because she's kiting out a lot, you do need to get fleet footwork in most games because it just helps you being able to kite a lot more easy. Now in the second row, I always recommend going over heal because she actually has a lot of healing. In the third row, I always recommend going Alacrity. It's a much better choice than the other two, as Alacrity provides attack speed, which you will use a lot. And we also have Cut Down in the fourth row. Now you can also go Last Stand, but Cut Down is actually really good because Kayle doesn't have much health, and this will only increase your damage if you're playing against opponents which has more health than you do. Now in the secondary page, I would always recommend going to the Inspiration Tree, and then always taking the Biscuit Delivery because this provides you more sustain in the laning phase but also more mana. I also recommend going to Time Warp Tonic because you're going to be starting off most of your games with the Corrupting Potion, so this is once again going to give you a lot more sustain. In the bonus stats, I would always recommend going Attack Speed, 180, and 1 Armor or Magic Resist depending on the matchup that you're up against. As for the build of Kayle, I would always recommend going for a Corrupting Potion as the starter item because this provides a lot of sustain throughout the laning phase, which you will definitely need. Now the other starter items are not really as good, so I only recommend Corrupting Potion for the starter item. Now for the first item that you're going to buy is always going to be the boots, especially the Berserker's Greaves. Now the sooner you actually get the boots, the better it is because boots provide you the movement speed in order to reposition yourself in the laning phase to make 1v1 and everything else a lot more easy. Now buying the boots will also provide really good stats, and in this case I would always recommend going for the Berserker's Greaves because this provides a lot of attack speed, and once again Kayle uses a lot of attack speed, so you may only be going for the Berserker's Greaves. Now if they have a full 80 team comp, you could also go for Mage copies, and if they have a lot of CC you could also go for Mercs. Then again, I would always recommend going for Berserker's Greaves. Now the full build is typically going to look like this. You pretty much want to build these items in every single game, but keep one thing in mind, you do also have some few situational items such as the Zonias. Now you want to buy the Zonias obviously when they have like a lot of all-in against you, or you need some kind of survivability where Zonias is going to take your place, which will provide armor but also help you being able to have like an active which will save you. If they have a lot of healing, I would also recommend Morelos because this will stop them from healing anymore. Like it will stop a really good portion of heals. And if you're extremely fat, you could also buy a Hurricane. Although you don't really need this item that much, you pretty much want to follow the core build in every single game. Now, as for the skill order of Kayle, I always recommend maxing your Q first, then maxing your E as secondary, and then maxing your W as last. Now I did already like experiment quite a bit with the other skill orders, but this is very much the best option to go for right now. The pre-level 6 is one of the most important things about the laning phase of Kayle, because if you don't play this properly, you're going to fall behind insane amounts. In the early game, you always want to play as safe as you possibly can, because in the pre-level 6, there is nothing you can do. Most of the matchups that you're going to be facing, you cannot fight them in the pre-6 because Kayle is way too weak in about 95% of all the matchups. You have to wait until you reach level 6, and Until then, just sit back. It's okay to fall behind of about 5 or 10 or maybe 20 CS. As long as you don't miss out on the XP and you try to get as much as possible, you will be fine. The level 6 is where things are going to change completely. This is actually where Kayle gets into the favor in a lot of matchups. And to be very specific, there are matchups like Darius where it's all about getting their grab out and then simply cutting them down until you kill them. Around level 6, you want to try to focus on getting the pressure in the lane. Not necessarily just hiding your champion only and trying to do as much as possible, but you actually want to mainly focus around pushing down the lane so you can use that pressure to actually help out your jungler or maybe rolling mid lane, but always being able to pressure and kiting on our tower when you can is one of the best ways how Kayle can carry in the early game. Right as shown in this clip right now, we're holding the pressure in the top lane, so we could move to the mid lane or we could move to the jungler at any time right now, and we could help them out. Also at the same time, while having the pressure, I can easily kite down the Darius right now. There's absolutely nothing that Darius can do except from just tanking up everything, because if he happens to miss a single grab, then he won't be able to get close to me ever again. As you guys can see, this is pretty much like the kind of playstyle that you want to have throughout the early game. When you're playing against a ranged matchup, basically the same rule applies. Whether you're playing against a melee matchup as a Darius for instance, it's all about kiting. But if you're playing against a matchup that's ranged, such as Cannon, the same thing applies. You still want to play as aggressive as possible, because if you can pressure your lane, that allows you to open up opportunities to help out your teammates as well without losing anything at all. Make sure you won't forget this. This is pretty much the most important thing after reaching level 6 with Kayle. There's two ways how you want to play out the mid-late game. Firstly, I would always recommend trying to split push as much as possible on Kayle while trying to get as much farm from the enemy jungle camps as you can. The more jungle camps you can steal from the enemy jungle, the more they will eventually fall behind, and the more golds and everything else you will receive. Basically, getting as many jungle camps as possible will get you ahead without really getting like any kind of kills. And that makes Kayle like so good, because you can both split very well and 1v1 almost about anybody, while also farming out everything super fast. That's what makes Kayle like so strong in the mid-late game. Now, obviously, if your TP is down, or you think that the enemy team might have a lot of engage, then you also might want to consider just grouping up with your team directly